everybody. This time I'd like to talk about the Markan Sandwich. When I was writing my dissertation, one of my professors told me that I had to call it the intercalated pericope, which I guess made sense in a very academic dissertation. And an intercalated pericope just means a story that's intertwined with another story. But for normal day-to-day usage, I really like the term Markan Sandwich because it's something that Mark uses to start a story. He'll interrupt it with another story, and then he'll go back to the beginning of the story to finish up. So it's kind of like a piece of bread, the meat between the bread, and then the final piece of bread. And this is an indication that people have come to realize that Mark really is a literary master. He is not somebody that was just copying Matthew, as the feeling was for a long time. But Mark has his own touch to his gospel and uses things that we don't see necessarily in the other gospel. And he uses them for literary effect and theological effect. So I want to give you one good example of this intercalated pericope or Markan Sandwich, and then give you a hint about another one and turn you loose to find some more in Mark. And as you find them and as you interpret them, feel free to share them on the group forums. So the first one I want to talk about is in Mark 5, and I think it starts about Mark 5:21. It's a story of Jairus' daughter intercalated or interrupted by the story of the woman with the hemorrhage. And just from a purely literary flow, this is a little bit awkward because Mark starts a very intense story about this man, synagogue official, his daughter is near death. And the synagogue official is risking everything to go to Jesus because at this time Jesus is in conflict with the synagogue. But he loves his daughter and he's willing to do anything to save his daughter. So he goes to Jesus and begs Jesus to save his daughter. Now, they're on the way to save his daughter. Jairus is still very nervous. He knows his daughter's sick. He wants Jesus to hurry up. You can just kind of imagine him pulling Jesus through the crowd. And all of a sudden, Jesus is ambushed by this woman with a hemorrhage, who's had a hemorrhage for a long, long time, and is therefore ritually unclean. So imagine Jairus' dismay. He's found the teacher. He's humbled himself to go before the teacher. Jesus has agreed to heal his daughter, and all of a sudden Jesus gets ambushed and touched by this unclean woman. So Mark just interrupts the story right there, and it creates a little tension, which I think might have been his point, but he tells a story in the middle. And this story is a woman who is desperate for healing and only has her faith that Jesus will be able to heal her, and she is healed. But then she comes around, read the story for all the details, but she comes around in front of Jesus, the honorable way to approach Jesus, admits all that she has done, and then Jesus says something very interesting. He says, your faith has made you well. And again, looking closely at the text, it may be a little bit confused. Has her faith healed her physically, or has her faith given her salvation? And you can almost read it either way. But the main point is this woman had faith. In the face of everything that the world could throw at her, she had faith. So Jairus pulls Jesus away. They get to Jairus' house, and the people say, oh, don't bother the rabbi, your daughter's dead. And Jairus has this sort of immediate crisis of faith. But Jesus says, no, don't worry, she's not dead. He goes in and he raises the daughter. So what a lot of people think is going on here is Mark is using this sandwich as a literary technique. And he tells a story that has an issue with it. Jairus has an issue of faith. He doesn't have enough faith. He doesn't really trust Jesus. If Jesus had said it's going to happen, it will happen. And in the middle of this story about Jairus not having enough faith is the story of a woman who does have enough faith. So what Mark has kind of done is he's taken that whole story, made it a unit, and he's put the hermeneutical key to understanding the story in the middle. So the real point of the story is have faith in Jesus. If Jairus had had more faith in Jesus, he would have worried a lot less. He would have hurried a lot less. And I think for a day-to-day basis for us today, the point might be certainly for us to have faith. But very often the teaching moments happen during the interruption. We're in the middle of our busy lives. We're kind of heads down going to do something, and God interrupts us. Now, we may not like the interruption, but very often that interruption is for a purpose, and that interruption is to teach us something that we need to know to deal with our busy life. So I think it's a great technique that Mark uses to tell the story of Jesus, to give us advice, and to really help us along. Now, the other one, there's a number of them in Mark, but there's a big one in, I think, Mark 12, and I will just give you a hint. It involves figs. And figs are important because they were the image of the temple. If you went to the temple, you would see the Holy of Holies. It was decorated on the side with fig leaves and things like that. So the fig or fig leaves were very much associated with the temple. So I give you a hint there. I leave it to you to look it up on your own and see how that has an impact on your interpretation of Mark. And again, if you find that one or if you find other ones, feel free to share it with us in the forums. So until next time, bye-bye.